Ethan Cole had seen his fair share of emergencies as a paramedic, but nothing compared to this. A week ago, the first reports came in: isolated attacks, strange infections. The news anchors kept repeating the same reassurances: the government has it under control. They didn't. Within days, the hospitals overflowed, the police were overwhelmed, and the infected tore through the city like wildfire. Now, standing on the roof of an abandoned diner, Ethan scanned the streets below. Smoke billowed from burning buildings. Gunfire echoed in the distance. The streets were chaos, cars abandoned, bodies lying motionless, and worse, the undead shuffling between them. "Ethan, we have to move," Marcus called from behind him. The ex-soldier had a sharp gaze, his rifle clutched tight. He had been Ethan's neighbor before the world fell apart. Now, they were just survivors. Ethan turned back toward their small group. Lily, a college student, wiped blood off her hoodie, her hands trembling. Hannah, clutching her young daughter, Sophia, close to her chest, looked pale and exhausted. They had all been strangers just yesterday. Now, they were each other's only hope. "The fire station," Ethan said. "It has supplies, space, and strong doors." Marcus nodded. 2 miles from here. We'll have to cut through the main street." "That's suicide," Hannah said, eyes wide with fear. "Those things, they're everywhere." Ethan sighed. She was right, but they had no choice. Their current hiding spot wouldn't hold. Supplies were running low, and the undead were already sniffing around the building. "We move fast and quiet," Marcus said. "Stay low, avoid the main roads." Lily tightened the straps of her backpack. "Let's just do it before I change my mind." They descended from the roof, exiting through the alley. The city felt eerily silent, aside from the distant moans of the undead. Each step felt heavier than the last. As they crept through the wreckage of a looted convenience store, a noise shattered the quiet, glass breaking. Everyone froze. A man stumbled out from behind the counter, his face pale, his eyes sunken. Then he lunged. Ethan reacted on instinct, grabbing a metal pipe from the ground and swinging. The impact knocked the man back, but he didn't go down. His mouth snapped open, revealing blood-stained teeth. "Zombie!" Lily screamed. Marcus raised his rifle. One clean shot to the head, and the undead fell. "Damn it," Marcus muttered. "That shot's gonna bring more." As if on cue, distant moans turned into a chorus. Shadows moved between cars. "Run!" Ethan yelled. They sprinted down the street, dodging abandoned cars and fallen bodies. The undead poured from alleyways, drawn by the noise. The fire station was in sight, tall, red doors standing strong. But between them and safety stood a growing horde. "We'll never make it," Hannah sobbed, gripping Sophia. Ethan spotted an overturned ambulance nearby. Its siren was still intact. "I have an idea," he said. "Get to the fire station. I'll be right behind you." Without waiting, he dashed toward the ambulance, yanking the door open. The siren controls blinked at him. "Come on, work," he flipped the switch. A loud wail shattered the air. Every undead in sight turned toward the noise. "Ethan, move!" Marcus roared. Heart pounding, Ethan sprinted as the horde veered away from his friends, fixated on the blaring siren. He reached the fire station just as Marcus slammed the door shut. Panting, Ethan turned to the others. "We made it. For now." The fire station smelled of dust and old smoke, a relic of a world that had once been safe. Ethan leaned against the metal lockers, catching his breath. Outside, the undead clawed at the heavy doors, their guttural moans a grim reminder that the fight was far from over. "Barricade those doors," Marcus ordered, already dragging a heavy workbench across the entrance. "We don't know how long they'll hold." Lily and Hannah helped, stacking chairs, toolboxes, and whatever else they could find. Sophia clung to her mother's side, too young to understand the full horror of their situation. Ethan pulled a flashlight from his pack. We need to check the rest of the building. Make sure we're actually alone. Marcus nodded, taking point as they moved through the darkened halls. The fire station had been abandoned in a hurry, lockers flung open, half-eaten meals left to rot. The smell of decay clung to the air. They reached the sleeping quarters first. Empty. Then the kitchen, stocked with canned goods, bottled water, and energy bars. A small victory. But as they entered the garage, a sound stopped them cold. A faint rustling. Ethan raised his pipe. Marcus lifted his rifle. Then, from behind a fire truck, a figure stumbled forward. Ethan's heart pounded. Was it another zombie? No. A man. Gaunt, with sunken eyes and a torn paramedic uniform. He raised shaking hands. Please, don't shoot. Marcus didn't lower his gun. Who the hell are you? The man swallowed hard. Ben. I was trapped in here when everything happened. He pointed to a bloodied bandage wrapped around his forearm. Got bit a few days ago. Cut it off before the infection spread. He lifted his sleeve, revealing a crude, self-inflicted amputation just above the elbow. Lily gasped. Oh my God. Ethan stepped closer. You did this yourself? Ben nodded weakly. Didn't want to turn. Marcus was still skeptical. How do we know you're not infected? Because I'm still here, Ben said flatly. If I was turning, I'd be dead by now. Ethan knew he had a point. Most turn within hours. If Ben had survived days, he might actually be clean. We need all the help we can get, Ethan said, looking at Marcus. We let him stay. Marcus exhaled sharply but lowered his weapon. Fine. But one wrong move, and I won't hesitate. Ben slumped against the fire truck. Trust me, I want to live just as bad as you do. The next few days were spent turning the fire station into a true safe house. Marcus reinforced the doors with metal sheets from the garage. Lily inventoried supplies, while Ethan tended to Ben's wound and rationed out antibiotics. Hannah took care of Sophia, trying to maintain some sense of normalcy. She even found an old box of coloring books in one of the offices, a small but much-needed distraction. By day 4, things felt stable. But that illusion shattered on day 6. Ethan was on watch when he heard it, something moving outside, different from the usual undead groans. He peered through a crack in the barricade and stiffened. Not zombies. People. 5 figures, armed, moving with purpose. Raiders. Ethan rushed back to the group. We've got company. Marcus loaded his rifle. We don't know if they're hostile. Ben scoffed. They will be. The survivors gathered behind cover as the raiders approached the fire station. Then, a voice called out, We know you're in there. Open up, and no one gets hurt. Hannah clutched Sophia tighter. Lily swallowed hard. Ethan's grip tightened on his pipe. The fire station was their home now. And they would fight to keep it. Ethan crouched near the barricaded fire station entrance, his heart pounding. The raiders outside had been circling for nearly an hour, testing weak spots, rattling doors, and whispering among themselves. Marcus checked his rifle, his face grim. We can't let them in. We have to make them think we're not worth the trouble, Ben whispered. Hannah clutched Sophia tighter in a dark corner, trying to keep the little girl quiet. Lily held a crowbar, her knuckles white. They weren't soldiers. They were just survivors trying to hold on. Then came a loud bang. They're trying to break in. Lily hissed. Ethan clenched his jaw. If we fight, we need to do it fast and loud. Scare them off before it turns into a siege. Ben grabbed a flare gun from the fire truck. I've got an idea. Before Ethan could ask what he meant, Ben sprinted toward the second-floor window. He yanked it open, aimed, and fired. A bright red flare shot out, illuminating the street, and the dozens of zombies lurking just beyond the raiders. "Oh, hell," Marcus muttered. The undead turned their decayed faces toward the light, their moans growing louder. One of the raiders shouted, "We got walkers. Fall back." But it was too late. The zombies swarmed like a tidal wave, crashing into the raiders. Screams filled the night as the living were dragged down, torn apart in the flickering red glow. Ethan slammed the window shut. "That won't hold them for long. We need to move." Marcus nodded. "Garage door. We take the fire truck and run." Hannah looked terrified. "You want to drive through that?" "It's our best shot," Ethan said. "We can't stay." Ben rushed to the driver's seat. "Get in." Marcus and Ethan heaved open the garage door. The noise drew the undead, but by the time they turned, the fire truck roared to life. With a deafening crash, the vehicle plowed through the horde, crushing bodies under its massive tires. The fire station was gone. But they were still alive. By dawn, the truck rumbled down a desolate stretch of highway. The city was behind them, but safety was still far away. "We need a new plan," Lily said. "We can't keep running forever." Marcus checked the fuel gauge. "We've got maybe another 30 miles before we're on foot." Ethan pulled out a crumpled map. "There's a rural town up ahead. Fewer people means fewer zombies. And fewer supplies," Ben muttered. Hannah spoke softly. "We don't have a choice." The group drove in silence, exhaustion settling in. Every road was littered with abandoned cars, every sign of civilization reduced to ashes. Then, just as the sun began to set, they saw it, a small diner at the edge of a town, seemingly untouched. They approached cautiously. No movement. No sound. Marcus swept inside first, rifle raised. Clear. Ethan exhaled. The place was a time capsule, tables still set, a radio on the counter, and a few dusty cans of food left on the shelves. Ben grinned. "I vote we stay here a while." They reinforced the doors, covered the windows, and rationed their supplies. For the first time in days, they slept without fear. But safety was an illusion. On the morning of day 20, Ethan woke to a horrifying sight. A distant horde, larger than anything they had seen before, was moving toward the town like an unstoppable force. They had nowhere to run. Ethan stared at the approaching horde, his stomach twisting into knots. Hundreds, maybe thousands, of zombies moved in unison, a relentless tide of death rolling toward them. There was no time to think. "We need to go. Now." Marcus barked, already packing his rifle. Ben cursed under his breath. "We barely had time to rest, and now this?" Hannah clutched Sophia, her face pale. "We can't outrun them on foot." Ethan scanned the area. The diner wouldn't hold, not against numbers like that. Their fire truck was out of gas. They were trapped. Unless. "There's a hardware store across the street," Ethan said. "If we reinforce the diner, we might be able to wait them out." Marcus frowned. "That's a hell of a gamble." "Everything's a gamble," Ethan shot back. They had minutes before the horde reached them. Splitting up, they sprinted toward the hardware store, breaking in through the shattered front window. Inside, Lily grabbed nails and hammers while Marcus hauled wooden planks. Ben found propane tanks. "This could work," Ben muttered. "Or kill us all." Ethan wasn't listening. He was already outside, dragging supplies back to the diner. By the time the first zombies reached them, they had barricaded every window and reinforced the doors. The walls shook as the undead crashed against them, their moans rising in an unholy chorus. For hours, they held firm. Then, just after midnight, disaster struck. A window shattered. "Upstairs!" Lily screamed. The undead poured in. Chaos erupted. Ethan swung his pipe, smashing skulls. Marcus fired round after round, but there were too many. Ben fumbled with the propane tank. We need an escape route. The roof! Ethan shouted. Go! They scrambled up a ladder in the back room, clawing their way onto the rooftop as zombies flooded the diner below. Ben heaved the propane tank onto the roof, his hands shaking. If we blow this, we won't have another chance. Marcus nodded grimly. Do it. Ben lit a rag, stuffing it into the nozzle. Everyone jump, now! They leaped onto an adjacent rooftop just as Ben tossed the tank into the diner. Boom! The explosion tore through the building. Fire and debris rained down, incinerating dozens of undead. For a moment, silence. Then the remaining zombies turned toward them. Ethan's heart sank. We have to keep moving. For the next 3 days, they ran. Through forests, abandoned highways, and crumbling farmlands. Every step was a struggle. Hunger gnawed at them. Exhaustion threatened to break them. On day 25, they stumbled upon an abandoned gas station. Marcus found a map. There's a fortified supermarket 20 miles from here. Might be survivors. Ben scoffed. Or worse. Hannah hugged Sophia. We don't have a choice. So they walked. By the time they reached the supermarket on day 28, the sun was setting. It was fortified, all right, tall fences, floodlights, armed guards. A makeshift fortress. Ethan stepped forward, raising his hands. We need food and shelter. A guard aimed a rifle at them. Drop your weapons. Now. Ethan exchanged a look with Marcus. This wasn't a safe haven. It was a prison. Ethan and the others stood frozen outside the fortified supermarket, rifles pointed at their chests. The guards looked hardened, their faces cold and emotionless. Drop your weapons, the lead guard ordered again, his finger hovering over the trigger. Marcus scowled but complied, lowering his rifle to the ground. One by one, the group followed suit. The massive gates groaned open, revealing the survivors inside, men, women, even children. At first glance, it seemed like salvation. People milled about, carrying supplies, reinforcing walls, and cooking over makeshift stoves. It looked safe. But Ethan saw the fear in their eyes. A woman in her 40s approached, her long gray hair pulled into a braid. I'm Meredith, the one in charge. You'll find food and shelter here, but you follow our rules. No exceptions. Ethan nodded. We just need rest. We'll work for our keep. Meredith smiled. That's good to hear. But something about that smile put Ethan on edge. For the first couple of days, the place seemed manageable. They had food, water, beds, luxuries they hadn't had since the world fell apart. But then the rules became clear. Every morning, a loud horn signaled roll call. Those who didn't show up were disciplined. Food was rationed unfairly, guards ate well while others barely got enough. People whispered about those who tried to leave, and never returned. On day 33, Ethan saw it firsthand. A man was dragged into the center of the compound, kicking and screaming. 2 guards forced him to his knees as Meredith stood above him. You broke our trust, she said, her voice calm. You stole from our supplies. The man's face was gaunt, his ribs visible through his torn shirt. I was hungry. My kids were hungry. Meredith sighed. There's no room for selfishness. Then she pulled out a gun and shot him in the head. Sophia screamed. Hannah clamped a hand over her mouth, eyes wide with horror. Ethan clenched his fists. This isn't survival. This is a dictatorship. Marcus glared at the guards. We're getting out of here. That night, they met in secret. We can't stay, Lily whispered. She's a tyrant. Ben nodded. But if we run, we need a plan. Ethan studied the compound. The fences were too high to climb unnoticed. The guards patrolled in shifts, leaving a 2-minute window at the west gate unguarded. It's not much, Ethan admitted. But it's our only shot. They packed whatever supplies they could steal and waited. At midnight on day 36, they made their move. They slipped past sleeping survivors, staying in the shadows. When they reached the west gate, Ethan whispered, "Now." Ben cut the chain with bolt cutters, and they slipped through, just as a guard spotted them. "Hey! Stop them!" Shouts rang out. Alarms blared. They ran. Bullets whizzed past. Marcus fired back, covering their escape. Then Meredith's voice boomed from the speakers. "You think you can just leave? You belong to us now." More guards gave chase. Ethan pushed forward, gripping Sophia's hand. "Keep running." Ben hurled a Molotov at the guard tower, setting it ablaze. The distraction worked, just long enough for them to disappear into the forest. They ran until their legs burned, until the sounds of pursuit faded into the distance. When they finally stopped, gasping for air, Hannah hugged Sophia tightly. "We did it." Marcus wiped sweat from his brow. "Not yet. They'll come looking." Ethan looked at the sky. Dawn was breaking. They had survived another night. But they weren't free yet. Ethan and the others crouched in the thick underbrush, catching their breath. The sun had begun to rise, casting long shadows through the trees. Behind them, smoke still curled from the burning guard tower at the supermarket compound. They had escaped. But they weren't safe. "They'll come after us," Marcus muttered, reloading his rifle. "Meredith won't let us go that easy." "She wants control," Ben said. "And if she can't have that, she'll settle for revenge." Hannah clutched Sophia close, whispering softly to keep the little girl calm. Ethan scanned the forest, trying to form a plan. "We need to keep moving. There's an old ranger station marked on the map. If it's intact, we might be able to fortify it." Lily wiped sweat from her forehead. "How far?" 10 miles. A brutal distance on foot, but they had no choice. For 2 days, they pushed forward, scavenging what little they could. On day 43, they found an abandoned cabin. It wasn't much, half-rotted wood, broken windows, but it provided temporary shelter. That night, Ethan and Marcus took turns keeping watch. The first sign of trouble came at dawn. Gunshots echoed in the distance. "They're tracking us," Marcus said grimly. Ethan's gut twisted. "We have to move." They grabbed their gear and ran. By midday, they reached the ranger station. It was old but intact, perched on a hill with a clear view of the land below. There was a well for water, a storage room with some supplies, and, most importantly, only one road leading up to it. "We can defend this," Ethan said. Ben checked the doors. Better than running forever. For 2 days, they reinforced the station, setting up makeshift barricades and positioning weapons. Then, on the night of day 46, they saw it. A convoy of vehicles coming up the road. Meredith's people had found them. "Positions," Ethan ordered. Marcus took the rifle. Ben had Molotovs. Lily and Hannah secured Sophia inside. The first vehicle stopped at the base of the hill. A loudspeaker crackled. "You can still come back," Meredith's voice called. "Drop your weapons. Kneel. And I might let you live." Ethan gritted his teeth. "Not a chance." Meredith sighed. "Fine. Kill them." Gunfire erupted. Bullets ripped through the station's walls. Ethan ducked behind an overturned table, returning fire. Marcus took out one of the shooters. Ben hurled a Molotov, setting a truck ablaze. Then came the worst part. The gunfire had drawn something else. A distant, guttural moan. Then another. Then dozens. The undead were coming. Ethan's stomach dropped. They've just doomed everyone. The first zombies appeared at the tree line, stumbling toward the noise. Meredith's men panicked. They turned their guns on the approaching horde, wasting bullets. It was their mistake. Ethan saw the opening. Now. We push back. The group fired everything they had, taking down as many of Meredith's men as possible. A scream rang out as a zombie dragged a guard to the ground. Then another. The chaos spiraled. Marcus shot at Meredith's vehicle, hitting the tire. She cursed, struggling to regain control. Then, suddenly, she was surrounded. Zombies clawed at her, pulling her from the car. She shrieked, one final sound before the horde devoured her. Ethan turned away. It's over. By day 50, the group remained at the ranger station. Meredith was gone. The supermarket compound had likely collapsed without her. And for the first time in weeks, they weren't running. Ethan sat on the porch, watching the sunrise. Marcus joined him. What now? Ethan took a deep breath. Now, we live. The end.